this time, I'll call the meeting of the Marshall City Council to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening. This is our last regular council meeting of 2018. We have an agenda before us. Are there any changes to that agenda? Not, we'll operate under that agenda and we'll move to agenda item number 3. Agenda item number 3 is a recognition of Council Member David Sturrock for his years of service to the Marshall City Council. I'll invite David to come out front and I have a presentation. So I'll be back to the council. David, my honor to present this plaque to you, presented to David Sturrock in recognition of dedication and service as a council member to the City of Marshall, 2001 to 2004 and 2015 to 2018. David, thank you for your service.
Thank you very much.
Also would recognize David's families here, and of course, any one of us need that support, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to your family.
Thank you.
David indicated he may have more to say later in the meeting, so we'll look forward to that. We'll move then to agenda item number 4. Agenda item number 4 is to consider the minutes of a special meeting that we had as well as a regular city council meeting that we had. Both were held on December 11th. The council does have the minutes of both of those meetings. Are there any corrections to note?
Move to approve, Mr. Mayor.
Motion by Steve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Craig. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. We'll note 1 abstention. Agenda item number 5. Agenda item number 5 is the consent agenda. The items on the consent agenda are up on the screen, and they include consider the recommendation to approve the computer information services local user agreement between Lyon County, City of Marshall, City of Tracy, City of Minneota, or the agreement is between those cities as agenda item number 5 and 6. Agenda item number 7 is Commerce Industrial Park, second edition, the introduction of the plat and calling for a public hearing. Consider the resolution that would approve City of Marshall retirements, calling for a public hearing regarding the proposed property tax abatement, and then finally consider the approval of the bills and the project payment. So is there any item on the consent agenda any member of the council wants removed for purposes of separate discussion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Steve, seconded by Craig to approve all of the items on the consent agenda. We'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Move to the next agenda item, which is agenda item number 11. And this item is to consider the extended memorandum of understanding between the City of Marshall, our police department, and Avera Marshall for a second full-time patrol officer to be funded by Avera Marshall. I'll turn to Sharon Hanson, City Administrator, to first introduce this. Also representing Avera Systems and Avera Marshall is Mary Martins, as well as our Public Safety Director, Jim Marshall. But first, Sharon.
Mr. Mayor and Council, there's been some discussion this past year about the existing contract between Avera and the City of Marshall, and discussions have occurred with previous Public Safety Director Rob Yant and also the current Public Safety Director Jim Marshall on renewing the contract, but also a revision in adding additional support and services, and the contract reflects those services and reimbursement. And I will let the Public Safety Director and CEO Mary Martins explain the contract in further detail.
Thank you, Sharon.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I want to thank you for your time. The agenda item obviously before you is the memorandum between the City of Marshall and Avera. And I want to start out by saying, over the years, I've often commented that one of the highlights of my job is that I get to work in a community that's been so supportive of its police department. In 2016, an MOU was signed with Avera that I felt was a clear example of one of our businesses showing their support by offering supplemental positions to our department by providing the funding for an additional police officer. That initial step by Avera, I think, has helped strengthen our working relationship and our partnership, and has allowed the police department to provide better coverage for the entire City of Marshall. Last month, I had the opportunity to meet with Mary Martins, the regional president and CEO of Avera, to talk about our current MOU, to talk about areas that we could that we're working well with the current MOU, and identify areas that we can maybe do a little bit better. And during that discussion with Mary, she had indicated Avera's interest in providing an additional position to supplement the current one position that they were funding. During that discussion, Mary had indicated that the current MOU was adequate, in that they just simply wanted to mirror the current memorandum of understanding with three really additions. Number one, to fund an additional police officer position, so going from $80,000 to $160,000. Number two, to move from a 3-year memorandum of understanding to a 5-year memorandum of understanding beginning in 2019, which would bring us through 2023. And then also for us to increase some of our presence and patrol in some of the locations that have been identified in the revamped or the extended MOU that was done by Dennis. When you look at this memorandum of understanding, your first thought is that, gee whiz, it strengthens the police department and improves maybe the coverage for Avera, but I really believe it goes far beyond the two of us, and that it truly increases the service and the coverage that we can provide to our community, and really impacts that coverage. So thank you for your consideration and your review. I'll let Mary make a couple of comments, and then we can try to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Jim.
Hi, good evening, Council. Thank you so much for having Jim and I here today. Would first like to extend a thank you to Jim and his predecessor, Rob. In this first couple of years, it's hard to believe that 2 years have gone by already since we were here last to talk about this. We learned a number of important things, and believe that we can continue to strengthen that relationship through additional resources. Again, the fabric of our community continues to change and shift, and it's responsible for us to continue to do the same. Would appreciate very much that, as Jim identified, that the relationship goes beyond just two entities working together. It's strengthened our emergency preparedness and response for the entire region, and we've had the opportunity, unfortunately, I guess, to demonstrate that on more than one occasion. So it's been a great partnership, and we're very appreciative on behalf of the staff, which will number now north of 750 in the coming weeks. They're very appreciative of the relationship as well. Would also note that there's been a lot of work done around safety and security and healthcare organizations in the state of Minnesota. I continue to serve on a steering committee at the state level, bringing together law enforcement and emergency preparedness and hospitals across the state. The relationship, which we didn't think was so unique 2 years ago, was actually quite unique, and has been. We've had lots of inquiries from the state in the last couple of years, and others starting to model what we've put together here. So again, I'm just very appreciative to the council Want you to know that this is a model that's being replicated because of your foresight and leadership, and just want to thank Jim for the ongoing partnership, and we're happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Mary. We'll open up for any questions or comments from the council.
I have a quick question. As we add another officer, and it is a good partnership, I agree. Besides the cost of the wages, which is be covered by Avera, equipment-wise, are we going to have to, you've added 2 full-time positions, we're going to have to add another squad car? How are those costs being handled, if they need to be handled at all?
I see those costs being fairly minimal. We're not going to be adding new police cars. It's mainly going to be uniforms. We have enough radios on hand to provide for that part of the equipment.
Perfect. Thanks.
Music to their budget ears.
Yeah.
Well, Jim, you may want to talk about how this kind of impacts and is helpful in scheduling, and perhaps some, reduces some reliance on some temporary help.
It does. So that's been 2 positions that have been added to our schedule. And not only just scheduling, I think what it does for the morale of the department and the officers. It probably brings our staffing more in line with other agencies of similar size with the help of Avera. So again, it's not just coverage, it's also the morale for the department takes less of the workload off of the others that are having to fill the shifts. And it's going to allow us to add another shift. And again, provide coverage that we normally wouldn't be able to do. We're kind of seeing an upswing and uptick. Obviously, mental health is becoming a talking platform for a lot of different people, and that's where we really see where this is going to be beneficial.
Thank you.
If I could add to that, Bob, what we've seen over the last couple of years, just somewhat because of our local growth in the healthcare continuum here, more counties outside of Lyon County are bringing patients to our emergency department. That's a good thing, but it does put additional demand on Jim and the team. So in the past, when they'd be challenged to meet the needs of the community and feel that they could stay prolonged periods of time in our emergency department in particular, we've lessened that. We're seeing that growth continue. And so this would afford then to be able to balance the broader community's needs for public safety, as well as increasing time spent in the emergency department, sometimes having patients there that are a threat to themselves or others for upwards of 4 and 5 days at a time until we can find placement anymore. So.
Thank you. Other input, Craig?
I just want to thank both of you for the extended efforts, and Mary, thanks a lot for Avera's presence and looking forward in the community. I really appreciate that.
Any other input? If not, you have the recommendation on this extended memorandum of understanding.
I move approval of the recommendation.
Motion by Craig, seconded by David. Discussion? Now we'll move to a vote. The motion does pass. We'll note 1 abstention. Thank you very much, Mary. Thank you, Jim. We'll move then to agenda item number 12.
Kyle, I'm stuck. Again.
So we're on agenda item number 12. This is the introduction of a ordinance related to a variety of zoning pertaining to manufactured homes. I'll call on Ilya Gutman to introduce this and get, again, the action before the council is introduction and calling for a public hearing. That public hearing then would be held at our next regular meeting. Ilya?
Thank you, Mayor Council. This all started last summer when Paul Sherholz, who is the owner of the Broadmoor Manufactured Home Park, approached the city and suggested that several ordinances of the city contradict the state statutes. We reviewed that thing carefully, and we figured out that yes, he's correct. So several ordinances do contradict the statute, so we reviewed them. In the process, we looked at the whole thing and decided that it would be reasonable at this time to review other ordinances connected and related and regulating a manufactured home park and manufactured home. And that's why the whole thing is larger than initially suggested. So we reviewed all ordinances related to manufactured homes and manufactured home parks. The main thing that contradiction was that the statutes do not allow the manufactured homes to be basically discriminated compared to regular houses. That's how it started, but we also looked at other sections. We reviewed several sections from several ordinances from other cities and tried to create a logical and reasonable set of ordinances regulating manufactured homes and manufactured home parks. And so we're suggesting that it's introduced and called for public hearing.
Thank you. Any questions for Ilya? If not, is there a motion to call for the public hearing, introduce the ordinance, and call for public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Steve, seconded by John. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Thank you, Ilya. Agenda item number 13. Agenda item number 13 is to consider the maintenance service proposal with technical work for the Mauser at the airport. Glenn Olson, Director of Public Works and Airport Manager.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is kind of a interesting one in that we've had this service for many years, and he's finally retiring and will only be available through half of 2019. He doesn't even know anyone else that will take his place. Now, I think we can find someone, but it is for FAA requirements that the lighting system be inspected and maintained on a regular basis for incoming flights. So we are recommending that it be approved, and you're given knowledge that we're going to have to find someone else to do it after June of this year. So would recommend approval.
Any questions?
I do have one question. So Glenn, so he's not sure who's available to do it.
That's correct.
It's an FAA requirement, they're lights. Now, I understand that they're technical lights because they're actually activated by the airplane
Yes.
coming in. So is there a way, I mean, is there the manufacturer of the lighting, do they have somebody who can teach somebody on city staff or at the airport, or is there any talk about that? Because I would assume once you're educated on it, it doesn't take too much to inspect the lights.
Yeah, you have to be certified.
You have to be
but
certified,
yeah, for
absolutely,
training.
but that would be a training.
The other thing is that there are many other airports in the state that fall under the same requirement if you've got instrument landing systems,
Sure.
for instance. So that's where we'll start with trying to find someone and training to see if that can be done in-house.
So the question would be, from a training standpoint, if we trained somebody at the airport or airport staff and they became certified, then not only could we provide that service for ourselves at no cost to the city,
Correct.
but we could actually make some money for the city by having that person go to other airports, because this guy, I'm assuming, has all the contracts around.
He does.
So something to think about.
We certainly will.
Motion by David, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Steve. Discussion.
Well, just a quick question on that. So this is the maintenance of the lights. It's not certification that they're all in working order or something
Yes,
that
it
requires.
is
what's that?
certification of that they are in working order.
Okay, I was wondering about that because if it's an employee, then there's always a question of independence. And it looks better if there's an independent person coming in and certifying it than if we have our own employees certifying the lights.
We'll certainly look into it.
Any other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 14. Agenda item number 14 is the website update and the revision proposal. Sharon, I'll turn to you.
Mr. Mayor and Council, one of the goals for the administration in the coming year is to update our website. I don't know when the last time it's been updated. There's several functions that don't work properly on mobile settings, and just a general refresh of the website needs to occur. It is, so to speak, the front door of City Hall, and it's important in terms of getting information out to our residents. And we do have Alex Peterson, who's taken the lead in this particular project, our media communication specialist, and he will present additional information on this agenda item.
Thank you, Sharon, and thank you, Mayor and Council. Apologize if my voice goes out. I'm still battling a little bit of a cold here. So a little bit of history here. We have looked at our website, ways to improve functionality and ways to improve the user experience. We're very limited with what we have currently. It is older, it is outdated. We have run into some different issues. So in talking to Sharon, we decided to bring together the technology committee that we have to go through and look at our website, look at other city websites, see what functions well, what doesn't function well with other places, and then also get an idea of what vendors they're using as well. So we worked with our technology committee on a couple different meetings to go through the different websites, say, okay, here's towns like size like us, here's what they use, what do we like about theirs, what don't we like about theirs, and we came together with pros and cons of what we would like a new city website to have for functionality. In the process of doing that, we came up with 3 vendors that were very common across the board. Those were Vision by Granicus, Civic Plus, and Revise. In all of the websites that our technology committee liked, it was very clear that Revise was the vendor of choice. They did all of the websites that we were most impressed with. So we went forward to request some initial proposals between those 3 companies. Vision by Granicus did not submit a proposal. Civic Plus did submit a proposal, and Revise submitted a proposal as well. Revise went a step further and offered to give us free access to a what's called a sandbox, or a free website that ours would be like to play with, and to see if we thought it would function well for what we needed. And boy, I tell you what, it did. It functioned extremely well, and all of us, including on the technology committee, were very impressed. It's very user-friendly. There are a ton of new features that are really, really beneficial compared to what we currently have. The user experience is light years ahead of what we currently have, which would allow staff from all over the city to actually update their own personal areas of the website. So it wouldn't be necessarily having to go to one single person to make a single change. We'd be able to divvy out access to whoever needs it, go through very simple training, and then have an approval process. So they could make the changes, have it be approved by a webmaster, make it live and out to the world. Very, very seamless, very fast. Another great thing is the possibility that we could actually bring in some of the other random websites that the city has, such as Tallgrass Liquor, our Studio One website, the Merit website. We could actually conglomerate those into this website to help reduce cost. So we wouldn't have separate hosting fees, separate website fees. Let's bring it all together, work together. It would make a lot of sense. Another really great feature with the Revise that we're bringing forward tonight is their notification options. They have a communication center, and this is a really, really, really awesome tool for the communication sides of things, which of course I'm a little bit passionate about. I'll admit that. So I think that would be a fantastic thing that comes with the website at no extra cost. They have a great form system. Another really cool thing is they have a built-in translator, so our entire website can be translated into any language, basically. So that's really, really helpful in that aspect as well. We wouldn't lose any of the current functionality we have. We would increase functionality with options. We would also work with Municode to integrate all of the new council stuff right into this website, which would be a super user-friendly way of going about that. And the best part about it was Revise came in with the lowest option, and they were by far our favorite proposal. So as far as the technology committee is concerned, and Sharon and I, We think that Revise is a very solid option for moving forward with the new website. Entertain any questions?
Thank you, Alex. Craig?
Yeah, just a question, Alex, on the translator. If we were going to use this site for doing some official messaging out to other members of the community, is it like certified quality where we could do, I mean, it's trusted messaging, trusted translation?
It does use the Google Translate, so
Okay.
it's not 100%, but it's for being what it is, it's very, very good. And
Okay.
it's continuing to get better every day. But yes, as far as I understand, that translation is also being able to be embedded with your communications that go with it as well.
Okay, all right,
So that's super awesome.
thank you.
John?
Then this replaces Webtronics that
Correct.
doing what they're doing now.
Right.
And any of the other, like say any of the other chamber, looking at chamber sitting in the back, you're keeping basically what you're doing with that. So this is really just the city's websites, everything that's tied into that.
As of right now, yes.
Okay.
Alex, when you were mentioning the partner websites, did you have the library in mind for that also?
We'd have to talk with them.
I
We
mean,
haven't,
if
if they're willing to, and if it's something that their system would integrate into, absolutely, we're
that may
more than willing
be,
to.
that interface may come up with a couple of the others.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. Thanks, that's a great option.
And other questions?
With regard to the bid here, the 2,400 annual cost, that's paid for the first year, and then every year then you'd pay 2,400 each year after that? Or?
Correct, yeah, so that's the hosting and all of their maintenance that goes on to it. The nice thing about Revise is that they give you all of your maintenance, all of your troubleshooting, any new features they come out with, that's all included in that $2,400 yearly cost. So we're not locked in with what we purchase now is what we get. It continually updates every quarter, and as long as you have their service.
As far as the annual fee of 2,400, is there anything in writing or agreement as to how long it's going to stay 2,400, or could it increase substantially next year? Or
With this agreement, it is locked in place for the next 4 years. So in the agreement, it is labeled as 4 years with that cost. They didn't indicate they expect any change in cost.
So Alex, with that, you'd mentioned that if we roll some things in, we could have some cost savings. Any idea
Absolutely.
on that?
I don't have the numbers exactly on that, but it could be significant.
Guesstimate?
I'd guess a couple $1,000s.
So the maintenance cost would pay for itself?
Very well could, yep. Absolutely. They'd probably be pretty close.
And any other questions? Thank you, Alex, you've been very thorough.
Thank you.
What is the wishes of the council?
I move to approve the bid. I think that this is a fantastic thing.
Second?
Motion by Craig, seconded
Actually by
motion by Steve, seconded by Craig. I'm sorry, I confused you guys. Discussion on the motion?
We'll talk later there, Mayor.
I was looking at the contract terms here. Maybe I missed it. Where's the time period covered?
Within the payment schedule in the 4 box right above that, where it says the payment amounts and then has the includes there. And so that takes you through 2022 in this agreement, directly above the contract terms.
That's further in.
Way in here?
In the sales agreement. Actually, it's page 2 of 4 in the sales agreement.
Okay, yeah, I suppose it depends on what document you're looking at. Yeah, and the sales one right here, I've got it listed right here through 2022. There you go. That one. Thank you, Sharon.
I guess I didn't see that in
That's okay.
the packet here. Was that in the new packet or?
It should have been labeled revised website sales agreement. I don't remember which one it was on there. It's only a 4-page document. It wasn't the really long one.
And the other part of
Oh,
that
okay. I was looking at.
notice is the build-out is actually broken out into 3
Exactly.
annual payments. So it's
Yep.
third, and third. So it's actually a better deal because it's amortized out for.
Absolutely. Yep.
I guess I was looking at the old one, the original agenda item, and it was a revision or something, or did I? missed something here?
We did add this one in that included the payment plan. Yeah, the first one they had sent, they did neglect to have
Okay,
that in there.
so I guess I was looking at the original and didn't see the additional one here.
Yep. Sorry for
Other
that.
discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. And the motion passes.
Thank you all.
Agenda item number 15. Agenda item number 15 is the city branding and messaging RFP. Once again, we'll start with Sharon.
Mr. Mayor and Council, earlier this year, in part of an administrative goal and objective was to have cohesive messaging and branding for the city of Marshall. This has been a commonly used method for a lot of communities, not only in the state of Minnesota, but across the nation. In particular, with this particular goal, we've had a lot of interest from our corporate presence in the city of Marshall, including Schwann's, Relco, Avera, and hopefully I didn't miss anybody, but Lauren can also expand on that as well. Luckily, with our CBB Director, Lauren Deitch, she has taken a lead role in this and has worked closely with Relco Marketing VP Glenn Bader, who was not able to make it tonight, but Lauren said she could cover it for him as well. And so, Mr. Mayor, if it's okay, we'll have Lauren discuss this a little bit further.
Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor and Council. So I was hired by the CVB in August, and one of the first projects I got pulled into was this. There was a committee that was put together for the purpose of creating a rebranding RFP. With a marketing background, this was right up my alley, so it was kind of a fun project to jump into because it ties so closely to our visitors here in Marshall. So, there we go. So a brand, when clear and compelling and unique, is a foundation that helps a place become desirable as a business location, visitor destination, and a place to call home. Place branding revolves around the who and what of a city, which helps create a comprehensive brand identity. Branding is not simply a logo or a tagline. It's often confused that way because of the way marketing is presented. But in reality, it's the way the community actually functions, the purpose and vision behind what they do every day. It provides consistent representation and contributes to recruitment, retention, and economic growth. In order for branding to be successful, it requires strategic decisions, investment, collaboration, and complete buy-in from our community and our stakeholders. So if you look at the two logos I have here, these are the past two logos we've had for the city of Marshall. As you can see, we actually redid our logo in 2014, but that was the extent of what it was. It was an upgrade from what we had. There was no marketing research done. We basically pulled the exact same colors, design, concept, and turned it into a more modernized version. Although there's nothing wrong with our current logo, it doesn't tell any sort of story for the community. It actually forces us into a place where we kind of get lost. Nobody really understands what we stand for or where we're trying to move as a community. So, in speaking with a lot of our business owners, as Sharon mentioned, and potential investors and developers, it's a common theme that our city's identity is not well established. And so we're missing opportunities to attract new businesses, residents, and even visitors to Marshall. We just have nothing we stand for at this point by the simple logo we have now. So as we move forward and we look to rebrand, some of the areas we want to focus on is uniformity. The brand should convey a common message and image to internal and external audiences of the city of Marshall, a community identity, an identity and the promotion of what distinguishes Marshall as a regional competitive environment for investors, realtors, residents, and visitors, community and economic development promotion, promote a healthy economy, including the attraction of private investors, new residents, young professionals, and retain key businesses here in our community. A defined message that will market the city of Marshall locally, statewide, and nationally as a great place to live, work, play, and do business. The right place for development, redevelopment, investment, and the perfect mix of business-friendly community. Flexibility. The brand must be adaptable in order to meet the needs of a variety of departments, municipal functions within the City of Marshall, as well as a group of businesses within the overall brand. It must be flexible enough to grow and evolve to reflect market changes. And endorsement. The brand must be authentic and resonate with citizens, businesses, employees, and community groups within the City of Marshall and throughout the region in order to gain the broadest possible support for the initiative itself. It must be relevant to the city, but also reflect the desire for growth and forward momentum. So as a committee, what we decided was, because marketing, these types of campaigns can be very expensive, we know that. What we've decided to do is create 2 separate branding RFPs. The first is a full-service civic branding project, which would include everything from research, brand development, brand guidelines, and rollout. Of course, this would be the ideal situation, but we know costs for something like this can be relatively high. So what we decided to do was create a second RFP, which just focused on the market research behind rebranding, because to us, we believe that's what's most important. When you live in a community, you don't always get to see how great it is. We need that outsider perspective to come in and show us and, you know, talk with some of the people who live in our community and enjoy it every single day. And from there, we believe we could use that research to develop our own messaging, branding, and logos. Between the committee, we have ourselves and some subcontractors that we use. So what we're proposing is that we actually send out both RFPs, and through that selection process, choose one on either side, depending on how they come through. And we've decided, in order for that to happen, we would go through an application process, we would review it as a committee, and then actually bring them in for preliminary interviews, and they would put together a proposal so that we can decide what fits our community best. Any questions on that?
Lauren, in the profession and in the marketing world, there's this is a competitive environment as far as the number of proposals that we would expect?
Yeah. In working with Glenn Bader, who has a lot more experience than I do in this type of RFP process, we decided that we would take out the word civic in a lot of our things, because we actually do want to open it up to any sort of marketing consulting firms that would be able to provide these services. So we do anticipate quite a few applicants. We're hoping that just through the application process, we're able to eliminate a lot of it. And that's why we feel the interview process will be very important. Especially Glenn has said, we have a story to tell, and we want to make sure that we select somebody who can tell that story. So that's where we have chosen to do this 2-step process.
Thank you. John?
How about the timing on this, and especially in connection with our last action and the new website? How are those two going to mesh in?
So realistically, a new website, as you move forward, will probably still could take up to a year to develop. So I think our goal would be to get this done within that same time frame. I would say the RFP could be open for a month to 2 months, and then the review and interview process another month to 2 months, and then we would get rolling on the actual process. But within the 2019 calendar year, I believe we could have this completed.
Other questions?
The other question I have is, with rebranding, there's more than just the cost of the research, because it goes simply down to all the rebranding of all your vehicles, of all your city jackets, everything. That if we do this, we need to make sure it's done right, because like you said, it was done 4 years ago. Now all that stuff becomes, we want to get rid of it. If we rebrand it, we want to get rid of it.
Yes.
So there's a significant cost in this. We want to make sure it's done right. But I do understand, you know, I'll use just my little logo on my truck. People recognize the white trucks with the blue hammers. That's Jim Lazinski. So it is important to get it right. Mm-hmm. But we need to get it right and not do it again in 4 years, because it's not just $20,000. By the time we switch everything over, this is going to be a lot more than that.
And that's where the marketing research comes into play. You know, that process was kind of ignored in the past, and I think that that's why we are where we are today, because we didn't do the necessary steps to make this right the first time. Of course, there's a possibility that you need to refresh the brand in, say, 10 years, but
not 4.
But yes, not 4.
Yeah, I just want to comment on that. One of the things that we've talked about is a logo is not your brand. I mean, it's part of the brand, but it isn't really your message. Mm-hmm. So we want to have this be more complete than what was done in 2014. And I do believe we'll have some discussion on when we want to implement the logo portion of it. It could be that the messaging is kind of the first implementation and logo comes later, because we just did do that and we don't want to have a cost impact. We are, for example, on vehicles, I believe we're still using or have on these vehicles the I don't remember what year that was, the prior logo. So, but that is a consideration on the cost, so I appreciate you bringing that up.
And there is a natural transition in branding when new logos do come about. I know Dr. Meister can attest to this. When ACMC got their new logo a couple of years ago, it wasn't as if one day everything flipped. It was a slow transition as new things came into play. You just slowly alter that logo itself out.
Some companies do flip. I mean, if we get a good logo, I'm not opposed to let's flip and everything, so we have that brand identity. I'm assuming on January 1st, you guys will not say ACMC on anything.
Maybe, maybe not.
A little different
I
situation.
abstained from that vote for a reason.
But it is, if we hit it right, do the flip, stick with it, and have some.
So on that, and thank you, Lauren, for this, but she makes a good point with the logo. So when you're looking at logos, you think big marketing companies, Amazon, FedEx, UPS, Postal Service, all those. But most people, I don't know what the logo of Minneapolis is. Duluth, I think I can remember. I grew up there.
Sailboat underneath the lift bridge.
Yeah, I grew up there. I don't remember it. I don't care. But I know what Duluth stands for. I know what Minneapolis stands for. And I think that that's what we need to get is what does Marshall stand for? So that people think they don't care what the logo looks like. They just think Marshall. So.
Part of the logo, there's some truth to that, but in rural Minnesota, it's nice they see that we're not going to market to Minneapolis, but we're marketing to the Walnut Groves, the Slaytons, they see that logo and they recognize it's Marshall. You do want to, because we want to draw them in as a regional center. So I think that we do want to make sure that we hit that right. So if Glenn is driving to Sioux Falls for something, they see that truck go through town, well, that's Marshall's logo. And logos do, because you ask any little kid what the big M is, to tell you it's McDonald's.
Any other questions for Lauren? If not, the request is for the authorization to go out for a RFP for this purpose.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Jim.
I'll second.
Seconded by John. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 16. Agenda item number 16, the Schwann's Regional Amateur Sports Center service agreement with the Marshall Visitors and Convention Bureau. I'll start with Sharon Hansen, and I would also say that there's been probably a number of meetings that have gone into the clarification of a number of the accountability points on this contract. So first off, Sharon, thanks for your work going in, bringing us to this point on this. Sharon?
Mr. Mayor, Council, these discussions on the Red Baron or Schwann's Regional Amateur Sports Center service agreement took place early in 2018 and has really transpired to what you have in your packet. There was a lot of discussion about accountability and having some reportability back to the city. We did revise some of the actual duties in there from CVB to the city, and I know that Lauren did meet with staff yesterday to kind of formalize what some of those changes would be. But I think one of the most important things is that there was a feeling of importance of continuing the relationship, mostly because the amateur sports center and the whole complex is really relatively new and we're just getting started. And we think also one of the things that occurred in the fall is Lauren Deitz has taken the position of CVB director, and I've been really impressed with her and her work. And so this particular request for action makes it a little bit easier to go forward, in my opinion. So if it's okay, Mr. Mayor, I'd like the CBB director to explain a little bit more about the agreement.
Thank you, Sharon. Lauren?
Thank you. Sorry, you guys get to deal with me again right away. As Sharon already mentioned, I took over as director in August of 2018. And shortly after that, we did hire an events coordinator as well, Ron Porok, so he helps me with some of my events. We've also had some updates to our board just from a understanding standpoint. We recently added Sarah, who is the general manager at Bella Cucina. She will be joining our board this month. And as of January, we will have Joe from the Sleep Inn coming on as our third hotelier. So that is our current staffing situation. I just wanted to kind of touch on some of the 2018 highlights. I think oftentimes with the Red Baron, you always hear it's never used or it's underutilized or it's only good for hockey. But when you take a look at these numbers, it really tells a different story. We had 3,607 reserved hours within the Our School Today system. That includes everything from meetings, hockey, to expo time. It's not all inclusive by any means to just hockey. And of those, we did have 8 Maha tournaments, which was a high year for them. They typically average 4, so it was a big year. And looking forward into 2019, we should have similar numbers. We also had 13 expo floor events, 4 of which were multi-day, and 2 new annual events. So I think our growth in that area is promising. A challenge I'm actually running into, and I'll get into later, is our scheduling issues because we only have ice off 6 months out of the year. We actually are running into having to turn people down because of when they're wanting to get on the floor. In addition, we had just about 30,000 in Dasher sponsorships. Again, we're just in the process of actually redoing that. We're going to streamline the system a little bit for our sponsors to make sure that not only is the process easy, but also they're getting more exposure for their dollars. And finally, we did have our Avera dedication this year of the plaza, which was just another added addition to the arena. It gives it more of an appealing look when you drive by and gives people something to stop and take a look at while they're there. So when you look at 2019, we are looking to add at least another 200 hours of reserved time in the arena as a whole. Of course, we expect Maha to take on another 50 to 100 themselves, but this would more focus on expo time. So right now our goal is to have 3 additional from this year, expo events. We already have 11 booked with about 4 on the line, 2 of which are weddings, 2 are new events that have never been held on the floor, including the Pheasants Forever Banquet and the Healthy Living Expo. And then we also have a potential vendor show this year, which would be a new venture for us as well, and actually a weekday event, a 2-day weekday event, so that would be a really nice addition for us. So like I said, we like to get some multi-day use out of the facility. Right now we're kind of doing some one-and-dones, which is difficult. It'd be nice to be able to utilize a space more effectively if we could keep those events 2 more days. I do know our home show and boat show are actually adding an additional day this year. So we are getting to that point. They're actually moving into a Thursday, so we'll have some weekday time there as well. And of course, weekday time. That's always going to be a conversation because it's easy to fill on weekends, but we need to find ways to fill it during the week. So that's what our goals are for 2019. And in addition, we had a kind of a retreat a couple of weeks ago with some members from Schwann's and some community stakeholders about what our priorities are moving forward. It's easy to say that we want more events, but how are we going to do that and what actual steps do we need to take? So we decided these were our 3 top priorities for 2019, which is to build more service offerings and build more or less a full service all-in-one experience for people. So for example, a wedding, if a bride comes in, we'd be able to get the tables lined up for them, give them accessibility to vendors and food, beverage, or liquor, all those types of things so that they're not calling 10 different people to get into the facility and trying to arrange that. We would try and create more of an experience. And I'm actually in the process working with Cody Mellentine a little bit more closely to start taking those steps to make that possible. We also, of course, want to build stronger marketing communications and promotions of the facility. I would like to do an always-on marketing campaign, which basically means there is no off-season. We're constantly trying to fill the arena in different ways. And to do that, we need to find the different target audiences that could use our facility for different types of functions. And then finally, supporting some arena development, whether that be floor, parking lot, storage space. We know that those needs are coming up quickly, and being able to help with some feedback on those and support the staff that have to take those projects on, especially the Sports Commission. And some additional things we're working on, as I mentioned, we're streamlining the sponsorship process. And then we are also working on an event layout program. Right now we're using basically a Word document to draw out tables on the floor. So we're actually looking at some online software that people can come in and tell us they have this many guests, and we can automatically lay out layouts for them. We can fill in vendors, we can do all that processing, so when they get there, they have a map of what their event will look like. It's not such a guessing game, which when I got married there would have been very nice. So outside of the actual Red Baron, some of our focus areas for the CVB, because they go hand in hand, is finding ways to help with room absorption. I know the conversation's always had about a new hotel, but I also really want to focus on the hotels we do have. So I actually met with my hoteliers last Friday, and we sat down and talked about their pain points and how the CVB can help manage those and what we can do to help fill rooms on empty days. So one of the things we're doing is actually building a calendar. It's kind of a availability calendar amongst all the hoteliers, so they can select weekends that are really full for them, and then we'll see that we mark that one all red, and so we won't try and bring events in on these weekends that are already full with other things. So we're trying to find ways to spread events out so that everybody gets more rooms down the road. So those are just some of the projects we're working on there. Again, target audiences. I don't know if we've always successfully reached the types of audiences that we want to bring here to Marshall. So just taking a look at if hunting is our big seller this year, obviously with the new bike award, we want to really publicize that and get people down here for those types of trips. So taking a look at what areas we've been missing. And finally, the brand awareness. This goes along with our branding. From a CVB standpoint, of course, if the city of Marshall gets a new brand, we want to do the same thing because we represent the same entities, in that I want to make sure that Marshall has their story told. So that would be, these are our big steps for 2019 that we're working on. So for the contract itself, as you know, we did have this contract last year. I know when I came into the position, there was some confusion on who did what and who was supposed to do what. So since I've been here, that has been kind of my big goal, even prior to this actual document being completed, was not only how does it make sense internally, but how does it make sense to the people who are calling me and asking to book an event. So I've been working very closely with Mary Tate and Cody to make this process easier for everybody. So when you look at what the CVB roles are, it's a lot of recruiting, marketing, the types of things that really are focused on bringing people into the city of Marshall. We also help with the actual event planning, event management, on-site facilitator for events, and then we manage our sponsorships. And that's a big part of my job right now, is getting through those contracts and stuff as well. And then when you look at how the city and community services are involved, they take ownership of a lot of the billing, the actual financial and legal side of things. They work with the permitting, and then Cody's staff helps with setup, tear down, and we all meet together for post-event meetings to make sure. One of the other big steps we're taking is we're doing a more thorough job of post-event reports, so that moving forward we can reflect on those and improve events in the future. So what I've been doing is, for the gun show, for example, we had a post-event report that I can now hand to Healthy Living Expo and say, these were the areas that we struggled with, we're going to improve it for you. These are who we use for vendors, just to kind of streamline, again, making things easier for the people who come into town to use our facilities. So, just from kind of a knowledge standpoint, the way that the funds are used that we currently receive from the city for this contract is staffing, especially during our event season. I have to have an event coordinator that helps with meetings and on-site management of events. We also Right now, we are fully funding one event, but as we continue to get more and more, we actually fully fund probably 2 to 3 this year. And our goal is to, we fund and start an event, and then after a year or 2 of operation, we can hand it off to another local business who can then use it as a fundraiser for themselves. We've done that with the craft show. We did that with the boat and RV show. So we get the structure built, and then we hand it off for them to execute it with already a reputation in place. So that's where a lot of those funds go right now. And then in addition, marketing, our yearly marketing of things in magazines, online, those types of things, in addition to event marketing, social media, online presence, things like that. Any questions I can answer?
Thank you, Lauren. We'll open it for questions. Craig?
Thanks, Lauren. That's awesome presentation, and thank you for all the work you do. One question that I have, and you talked about like the our schools or my schools scheduling piece. As you're booking the rooms and looking at this stuff, Merit, even though I know that you're not responsible for the Merit piece now with Jasmine and you know the coordination position there, but I hope that when we play the rooms out, that piece fits in too, to make sure that, you know, if we're having a gap, that we also leverage that, because our goals with Merit obviously are the same as yours for the community. We're feeding out of one side of that fund, and we recognize that. So as much as I know this is the Southwest Amateur Sports Commission piece, know that we want to, as speaking on the Merit side, we want to make sure that we maintain that relationship with you guys too, to coordinate that and to try to advantage that as best we can.
And I would also add that the knowledge of trainings that are going on, sponsored by MMUA Training Center.
Yeah, yep.
Bringing a lot of people.
Absolutely. So as much as we can use that, because those rooms on the schedule could be just as interplay as any of the club room or any other room. So as people are looking to book, if it fills the need, we need to use that. Hopefully in marketing that or booking those events, it's seamless.
And I will say too, when I work with people, especially for some of those meetings, the 50 to 100 people, I really do look at all the different venues in town. The Vastrom isn't always the right answer.
Sure.
And I mean, if we're actually looking at one now, that the Merit Center just makes more sense. So as a CVB role, although the Red Baron, I have this contract and this commitment, I still want to do what's best for the people coming to town.
And we appreciate it. We know that the marketing, the Merit room is substantially different than the Vast Club. I mean, there's a whole different experience there. But you know, if the role fits it, it is a good combination. Thank you for doing that.
Any other, John?
Curiosity, how does it cost this compare to previous cost? I don't remember.
It's the same.
Same.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yep, it's the same breakdown.
Wow.
Yep.
Any other questions?
I just have a couple comments. I did a little research today, and I appreciate all you're doing. And I don't want to sound like a negative Natalie, but I'm going to, so that's all right. Last year, the took in revenue of $147,000. I got that number from Carla, and we paid $84,000 to run it, to pay you to market it. And I understand you weren't here last year. And this year, again, we paid $84,000, and we have only done revenues of $168,000. You know, we're not getting a very big bang for our buck. Again, I know that you're new, and I guess my point here is I'm going to have a hard time supporting this, because in the past, we keep saying, well, it's new, it's new. We've had this arena for 3 years now. This thing should be pushing $400,000 or $500,000 in revenue. I mean, we're getting to the point that the shine is starting to wear off. And I know it's putting a lot on your plate, but we're paying $84,000 to get this thing filled, and it hasn't been done. When we're paying half of what we pay to CVB to fill it is half of our revenue. You know, that's not covering any of the other expenses, which I know I'll hear about. That's covered by the sales tax. But in a business sense, this thing makes 0 sense for business, plain and simple. And we got to start justifying to the taxpayers what we're doing out there. So, you know, I had talked to Sharon of maybe doing because CVB is not falling under the city umbrella. You have your own money. Is doing to me a commission or percentage. Yes, I think you're going to do a wonderful job. It makes you strive harder to where, okay, if I get 20% of all revenue, we're going to go out there, we're going to push harder. And I would like to see something like that done to try to encourage sales. And I think, again, you're doing a wonderful job. You're new. The previous guy probably didn't do as much as he should have. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. I can't answer that question. But we need to get these revenues up, and if it's somehow driving it by doing it on a revenue-based payment to the CVB instead of just a straight $7,000, I think that's something we as a city staff need to look at. This needs to start. We can't keep saying it's new, we're ramping it up. it should be ramped up. This thing needs to get going. Revenues of $168,000 on a $12 million project is not very good.
And of course, that does not take into account the revenue that is captured by businesses in the community.
I understand that, but if you go to a banker with this revenue and these numbers, he doesn't care what the business is captured. He just said, this is not, you're nuts.
But we didn't sell this as that business. It was never sold as the business. That's why it was put in front of the voters, and that's why it was paid for the way it was, so.
But if we put
But
this
it's
in
not
front
a
of-
business formula.
Yeah.
But Jim, it's not a business formula. It was not intended to be a business formula. That's why it was set up the way it was. That's why it's on the funding way that it is. And it is about both adding value for the community and then also bringing people into the community. That's how it was sold.
And I understand that, Craig, but we have a building here last year at $556,000 in expenses, not including depreciation. This building cost the taxpayers $1 million last year. Took in $147,000 in revenue.
Tell me, okay, for point of principle, who's the taxpayer? Because that's not general fund money, Jim. And when you talk about taxpayer, in my mind, I see general fund taxpayer. This doesn't consume general fund tax money. And that's the thing that we need to be clear about when we talk about this to the community, because otherwise we're presenting an inaccurate picture of how that operates and how it's funded, and that's not fair.
It is, when you pay extra sales tax, that is a tax. That comes from a taxpayer. That is spelled out in the dictionary. It comes from, the majority of it comes from, and I'm not saying we need to turn this around. I think Lauren's going to do a wonderful job. My point is we need to start putting some teeth into this and get it turned around. We as the citizens of Marshall are paying more for everything we purchase in this town to support this, and it was voted on, you're correct. But now it's been in operation for 3 years with a revenue of 2018 of $168,000. I think Lauren's going to turn it around, but I'm saying we should somehow, you know, just to give $7,000 to do it, that's not quite, you know, I don't think that works. I do know the one in Worthington is paid on the revenue. The gentleman who runs that, the management company that runs that, gets a percentage of the revenue, and that's all they make. We need to get this, and like I said, I think you have a good plan, but my point is at this point, I just can't keep supporting, throwing money at this until we get this thing going. And as long as we're paying extra sales tax in the city of Marshall, we as the people of Marshall are, you're correct, paying for this. The goal was to bring in enough people to create more and more revenue. I don't see that happening. I mean, I understand it was not sold to make money, but it's losing a lot of money.
The people that you described that are coming in and spending more revenue are not going to show up in that $160,000 that you're talking about. That's a completely different measure that you're using to make that identifier, and that's what I'm talking about. This isn't a normal business model, and that's why I think it's unfair to judge it against that business model. And I'll stop there, but I appreciate what you're saying, Jim, but you're measuring it with a tool that's not made to measure that. Yeah, that's my opinion.
And I just wanted to add one thing on the revenue side. One of the contributing factors to that might be that a lot of our events are coming from our sponsored days, from our sponsors. So of those 13, probably 8 were sponsored days, so they weren't paying for anything. So right there, that's, I mean, I can't fault the contracts we have in place, but we're giving away those revenue days. So now I have 3.5 months of my 6 months of weekends full with events that aren't paid for.
And that's something I assume you'll look at in the future.
So that's just, I mean, it's a challenge that I walked into, and that will be challenging to fix, because you don't want to take away from your sponsors, because of course their dollars are doing what they need to do as well. But that would be a big portion of why the revenue doesn't probably look the way you would like it to.
Any other questions for Lauren?
Well, this is unrelated to that. Well, it's somewhat related, but I do think it would be good to see some actual financial statements presented to the council and to the public, showing exactly what's happening to their operations and what the different revenues are and expenditures, and this included, so that everyone can get a good picture as to economically how well the Red Baron is doing.
And that's a good point, Glenn, and along with that is the what is going on with the sales tax proceeds, which actually are ahead of what the projections are, as well as the food, beverage, and lodging tax, which are dedicated to support the operational costs for both the this facility as well as the Merit Center.
Right.
For 30 years. With With that, any other questions, discussion? You do have a recommendation before you.
I move approval of the recommendation.
Motion by Craig. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by John. Discussion?
So, Mr. Mayor, for discussion, I think that I see both Mr. Schaefer and Mr. Lozinski's standpoint. I think that the taxpayers voted this in, so we have it. And whether we appreciate it or we voted for it or against it, it's there now. So I think it's incumbent upon us to do whatever we can to make it as useful as possible within reason. So I would speak in favor of this because I think it's a 7,000. And yes, Jim, you're right. On paper, it looks bad. But again, to Craig's standpoint, we're not seeing all the revenue because that sales tax is 30 years and that's in there. And so we don't see that sales tax coming in to support it. So that's part of it too. So, you know, the better question would be how much revenue in that sales tax has gone up compared to now versus when it was before it was there. And if more people are eating out or coming into the beds, then it speaks for itself, and it's a win-win. So I speak in favor of it.
Well, and I do understand that Lauren, I believe, was put in a tough situation when we came in June.
Oh, no question.
We missed the bang when it opened. I mean, I'll be blunt, that it needs to be promoted better, and I think you're going to do a wonderful job, but we need to get it turned around soon.
Other discussion on the motion? Not yet. The motion on the table. We'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 17. Agenda item number 17, consider the voluntary reduction in hours program. This was actually brought up at our last city council meeting. Council requested this come back as a action item. With us tonight, Sheila Dubs, Human Resources Director.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Program draft was provided in your background materials. The purpose of this program is to consider voluntarily reduced work schedules and voluntary furloughs for employees that will in turn save the city money. The concept would be to share this program guide with the employees to see if there's any interest. The program would be entirely voluntary. If there's interest from an individual employee, we would invite that employee to discuss his or her request with the supervisor and the department head. If the department head is in agreement, the request would be presented to the city administrator for consideration and final approval. If the department head foresees a negative impact to the city, the request would be denied. If the request is approved by the department head, it would then be presented to the city administrator for consideration, and the approval or denial decision of the city administrator would be final. An employee's request for a reduction of the normal work schedule would be identified for a specific block of time. Additionally, the reduction in hours must be at least 4 hours per week, but no more than 10 hours per week. If an employee is requesting a furlough, the furlough must be a minimum of 1 workday and a maximum of 20 workdays in any one time block. If approved, the employee's compensation would be reduced according to the reduction in hours worked. The employee would not be able to use accrued leave time or comp time to augment the pay reduction. The employee's vacation and sick leave accruals may be prorated based on the guidelines. Holiday pay may also be prorated based on the reduced work schedule. Staff are proposing to roll this out in a 2-year pilot program. And after 2 years, if there is interest in the program, we propose to come back to the council with a formal policy proposal. While we hope there is interest in the program, we don't anticipate it being widespread. We understand that for some of our departments or some positions, a reduced work schedule may not be feasible. However, for some positions, allowing a reduced work schedule for a temporary period of time or possibly even a long-term reduced schedule may be viewed as a benefit to an employee. Likewise, a voluntary furlough may offer an employee additional flexibility while saving the city in compensation dollars. An individual employee request will not be approved if it is deemed to have a significant negative impact to customer service or a department's needs. A request will also not be approved if it will result in foreseeable overtime work for other employees. Staff have been reviewing the program guidelines and trying various scenarios to see how reduced schedules or furloughs would work. And we'd actually like to propose that number 7 be amended. The draft guideline states that the insurance benefits for any month the employee is either on a reduced work week or a furlough would be prorated according to the reduced hours, and that insurance benefits will not be prorated for any month that the employee works 30 hours or more. We're proposing that that item be amended to state that during this 2-year pilot program, insurance benefits would not be impacted by an employee's participation in the program. At this time, we again don't know if there's interest from employees in the program. There could be interest from employees who haven't been working for the city for very long, so they may not have many hours of vacation accrued. Other employees may have exhausted their accruals due to an illness for themselves or a family member on an approved furlough may be an option for them to take pre-approved time off. There may also be interest from employees who would like to reduce their work schedule, possibly by 1 hour each workday or by 1 day during the work week. If you approve for us to roll out this program, we will use the document that you have as a guide in considering each individual request. If there's no benefit to the city, the request will not be approved. If a reduced work schedule or furlough is beneficial to the city and approved by both the supervisor and Sharon, we would formalize the agreement in a letter for the employee's personnel file. Both the employee and the city would need to be in complete agreement before the request is approved. Though we aren't able to predict the level of interest or the variety of requests that may come to us, we'd like the opportunity to consider the options that would save the city money. Sharon, I don't know if you had anything additional to add to that, but I'd be happy to try to answer any questions that you might have.
We'll open up for questions. I think there's probably modeled this after some other organization. I think SMSU has a similar policy.
Yeah, and that was going to be my question. So are there other cities specifically or other organizations or county governments that utilize this?
I believe that this example came from a county in the Twin Cities, Washington County. I am not aware of SMSU's program.
Kind of a phased retirement program.
Yeah, we have phased retirement, yeah.
Okay.
Which is kind of similar.
But it's not necessarily an ongoing thing. It's when they want to give phased retirement, they do, and when they don't want to, they don't. So it's selective. So.
Greg?
Just a question, Sheila, for if the employer wants to discontinue this at some point in time, what's the provision for that to return back to normal time?
The very last point,
in here?
number 13, says the City of Marshall reserves the right to rescind or modify the program with or without notice and at its sole discretion.
Okay, so there's no employee-initiated return to normal or full-time?
The employee could certainly discuss that.
Can we make sure
with
that's
Absolutely.
kind of an item listed similarly to 13, and then I would feel comfortable
this is
about
a voluntary employee program.
Right.
We certainly would not force an employee to be out on an unpaid leave.
Right, and I'm just thinking that, you know, as like the analogy or the scenario that you listed about maybe caring for someone and they've exhausted their leave and they're not going to do an FMLA or something like that. This is a great tool.
It could be.
Yeah, and so my concern or my question then is that as the benefit to the employee, you know, goes away, that it's also in here clear their pathway to go back and restore themselves back as a full previous to this agreement employee.
Oh, number 11, I think I understand your point now, sorry. No permanent changes to the employee's status or schedule will be made while participating in the program.
Okay,
so they would
got it.
always be able to be returned to their full-time status.
Perfect.
I apologize.
Yep, that does it. All right, thank you. I didn't catch that.
I have a question here. In the background information, you've indicated that this is a trial program. We're just trying it out to see if it works.
We
and
would
so
hope
forth.
to roll it out as a trial program.
That-
We would hope to roll it out as a trial program, yes.
What I'm wondering is if the council did approve this, and it is a trial program, and it looks like you want to try it out for a couple of years to see how it works.
2 years.
And so I'm just wondering if the council does approve this, if the motion would read that it's a trial program and that after 2 years, the council will evaluate it to determine whether or not this should be a permanent policy. I'm just wondering if that wording should be in
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm sorry, I don't have my motion that I put in the packet in front of me.
It says the council approves a voluntary reduction in hours
So you
program.
could certainly make an amendment to the motion with that understanding, but that was my intent, yep.
The, you call this a program, so, and then later it could be adopted as a policy. So technically, is there a difference between the program and a policy, and the program
Well,
eventually?
typically when the council adopts a policy, it is a permanent addition to our policy manual, and I would propose that this not be placed inside of our personnel policy manual at this point.
So it was
until we
intentional to
determine if
use
there's
that
interest.
that word.
Right.
I just had, if I can find my paper here, I was going to ask a question. In the, I guess I can get it off of here. On the second page there, it talks about the program is going to be reviewed annually. Is that annual? And then later it talks about the city of Marshall. So is it the intent that each year the city council will review it, will see what's going on and get information and make a decision, or is this something that city staff would basically look at and make a decision as far as number 12 is concerned? How would you, what is the correct interpretation there, and what is the intent?
We can certainly do whatever the council wishes. It was my understanding that I would bring it back after the 2-year trial to see if it was beneficial for the city as a whole and continued interest for employees. If we roll this out the first year, we get 2 applicants, and after that nobody wants to do it, there's no sense in continuing the program.
So that even though it's a 2-year before it comes back to the council, and that interim, certainly staff would be reviewing.
Yep. And if the council wished, we could certainly put something in the administrative brief to update.
I was just curious because it just says the city of Marshall, and I wasn't sure if you meant the council or the staff would be doing it. And your intent is at this point it would be normally staff would review it each year.
Yep, I'll defer to Sharon if she had a different opinion on that, but I would say internally at first until the 2-year period is complete.
And the last question on this is that, the department head and the city administrator have final approval on whether or not they approve the reduction in hours or not, and it's not grievable under our personnel policy. Is it possible in future years that different bargaining groups will want to include provisions in their contract that this will be grievable? Is that possible? Is that likely to happen, that different employees feel that they're not being treated fairly by city staff, whether it's a department head or city administrator, and that they want further protection and would want that protection in their contract agreement?
They could want to negotiate that. Again, those discussions of terms and conditions of employment occur throughout a negotiation process, and the council has the full authority to approve or reject a contract proposal. So if something like that would come up, you would have the final approval or denial of that contract.
I'm just wondering if we think that this is a good policy and adopt it, and then there are concerns that it's not being, employees are not being treated fairly, are we more likely to have it as a contract negotiation by the different bargaining groups? Because if we've adopted and say this is a good policy to have, and yet we may not be treating employees fairly, are we opening up a can of worms here that all of a sudden, pretty soon it's going to be grievable?
I see your point, Glenn, on that, and it's worthy of discussion and thinking about. But I'm thinking the reality of a bargaining unit trying to negotiate a reduction in hours in their contract. I'm not sure that's going to happen. So.
It's not that, I think they would see this as a benefit to their employees. I mean, otherwise they wouldn't be in favor of it.
We have other leaves in our personnel policies that the union members are also entitled to or eligible for, and those are not all listed in their contracts. So we do have various personnel policies that the union members also abide by that haven't become terms or conditions in their contract.
I guess my position is that it's the purpose of the bargaining unit to look out for the welfare of its members. And like I said, if they felt their members were being treated unfairly, I mean, that would be something they would try and bargain for, I would think.
Process.
What's
Again,
that?
We certainly hope that that doesn't happen in this process.
Right.
It is voluntary for the employee, so we would be, if someone does request, we would certainly be looking at that seriously to try to make that happen if at all possible.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I do have another question on this. And as I was reading through this program, you said if somebody had run out of paid leave, is this to be approved that they still have paid leave enacted? I know Sharon and I had talked about this earlier, and I'm just thinking, let's say I'm 3 months away from a step increase. I have 2 weeks of paid leave. Well, why wouldn't I take furlough, get that step increase, then take that paid leave? I mean, is there something in place to where they have to use their paid leave before they can use their furlough?
There is not. The furlough would be, again, voluntary and to the city's benefit is the only way that the city would approve that.
And I think the thing to remember that, because that's a good question, Jim, is that when they do the furlough, they're not getting any salary.
They're not getting paid, but this is just me running through my mind, okay? I don't know how many hours a city employee can bank. You start out as a young guy, my son-in-law works for City of Duluth. Do furloughs for 4 or 5 years till his step increases go up, then take off his paid leave. And I would encourage him to do that because now he's increased his pay and his hours paid off have greatly increased.
If staff suspect abuse of the program, we would not be approving the furlough.
And that's where it gets into the union issue too. It's just, I would think we want to require them to use their paid leave for, 1 hour a week, fine. That's good, but if they're going to take 20 days in a row off, I think we want to encourage them someplace in the policy that their paid leave is used first before we furlough them for an extended period.
There's no advantage to the city to have them use their furlough or their paid leave because we're paying them when they're on leave.
But they can bank the hours so they get paying.
But they can bank them. I mean, that's, I probably carry a higher balance than anybody in my office for paid leaves, and I don't do it because I'm thinking to myself, man, when I get that 2% cost of living, I'm really going to burn the governor down with that.
It can go from a step increase, and you look at a step increase, and I'll pick on our city administrator for a second. I know she'd never do this, but she just, she got a fairly significant wage increase. So if she pushed off her vacation to this year, it would have an impact on.
There's also a significant number of our employees that are no longer in steps and have not been in steps for a very long time.
I would just encourage with their somehow encourage them to use their vacation first.
John?
If they have a long
The whole idea of this thing being a pilot project is to flush this out. We've had some good discussion, good what ifs, but the whole idea is to run this as a pilot project and really see what does come out. So I think that's probably the answer is, if this does become a problem, we stop it. We've got 2 years to look at it. If it isn't a problem, problem. So I like the idea of this being a pilot program and coming out for 2 years to really try it first.
I do too.
I thought you were really close to a motion there.
Well, okay, how about if we do a motion to say the council approves voluntary reduction in hours program as a 2-year pilot program?
I'll second that.
Motion by John, seconded by Craig. Now discussion on the motion. Glenn.
Just 2 things. One is that one of the main purposes of this is it could save the city money.
True.
If the employees don't need to be there and they want time off, the city pays less in salary. So there's an economic gain to the city. The second thing is there is the clause, the right to rescind, modify, and so forth without notice, and at its sole discretion. We don't have to wait 2 years. If something's going wrong, we can rescind it, or if we can make improvements, we can make them anytime we want based on the results. So it's not like we're locked into these terms and we can't change it. That we have a way out and we have a way to improve it. So it's pretty flexible on the city's part.
Other discussion on the motion?
I would speak in favor of this motion because I think it's going to be good. As we look at the millennial population, we're not talking about employees now. We're talking about employees coming in. And Jim, you probably have the most expensive or the most experience with millennials. I know we do, and it's a tough market to crack into, and they want to work when they want to work, and you've really got to be flexible in this day and age. This builds flexibility automatically.
Other discussion on the motion?
Just one quick question. So, let's say we need to tweak it a little bit. Will the tweaks then come before the council if you want to modify something, or are we going to wait until the 2 years and then finally change the language, or how would you see it operating?
I think if it's something significant, we would certainly come back to the council or even the personnel committee to discuss the change. But if it's minor changes here and there to make it more agreeable to employees and the city, of course the city has to benefit from it or it doesn't get approved, then we could do it internally. But if it's something significant, I would think the personnel committee or the full council could take a look at it.
Okay. Thank you.
Other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote on the motion. Motion passes. Thank you, Sheila. We'll move then to agenda item number 18. Agenda item number 18, consider appointments to various boards, commissions, bureaus, and authorities. Earlier this evening, the council met in special session. Excuse me. Based on the interviews that were occurred for openings on the library board, I would recommend that Abby Belter and Linda Bond be appointed to 3-year terms on the library board to expire December 31st, 2021. I'd offer that as a recommendation and entertain a motion to affirm.
So moved.
Motion by Steve, seconded by David. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 19. Agenda item number 19, Commission Board, the liaison reports. Regional Development Commission had the board meeting this past Thursday evening. I attended that. It was a fairly routine meeting. And then tomorrow morning I'll be attending as a board member of the Highway 23 Coalition at meetings early tomorrow morning in Wilmer. Craig?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
And Steve?
The Community Services Advisory Board did not meet. The Cable Commission hasn't met. EDA meets tomorrow.
When?
The Planning Commission met, and the only item on their agenda was our agenda item number 12 with regard to amending the ordinance for manufactured homes, and we dealt with that tonight. That's it.
MMU was going to meet tonight, but ended up moving their meeting to last night, so was able to attend. A couple of bits of information out of there. Over the past 4 years, the purchase power expenses, what it costs the city for the electrical in 2015 to 2018, amounts to a accumulated of $10 million worth of savings to the community in electrical power. And that's pretty much what a fairly flat usage. It's really just the plain cost of power coming down that comes into this community. So that's a $10 million savings that went out to the citizens of this community. They did pass their budget last night and got through all of those discussions. As far as the installs on the new automated metering system, there's going to be a break for the holidays coming up on this Friday, but as of Friday, they would expect to be about 3,000 units completed out of the need to do about 11,000 in the community. So they're moving along pretty well. If anyone has any questions of when their route or when they can expect to have the change made, change can amount internally inside the house, and the water meter can go anywhere from about typically 10 minutes to 45 minutes if it's a little bit more detailed and if they have some difficulties with it. But it's usually that time frame. But if anybody's wondering when their house is coming up for the conversion, they could just make the request to MMU, and they will be able to pretty much target a, kind of a time period when it's gonna be, when you're gonna be on the list. That's about it. Like I said, EDA is tomorrow. So.
Thank you, John. David?
CVB meets tomorrow. I'll be there for that. The others have not met in this cycle.
Thank you, David. And Jim? We'll move then to council member individual items. Craig, let's start on your end.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Likewise.
Glenn?
I have nothing.
Jim?
I really have nothing, but I just want to wish all the citizens of Marshall a happy holidays.
Merry Christmas.
I wish that all citizens happy holidays. We have some who are not Christian.
David, I'm going to skip over you, and then I'll come back to you.
That's happened recently.
So, John?
I did have a concerned citizen bring up a point of looking at what their, people push off the snow off the sidewalk, and quite often maybe ahead of the snow plows. Snow plow comes through, especially downtown, picks up as much snow as possible, but there ends up being a ridge of some snow and ice that get back up on the sidewalk. To really, ask citizens to take a look at what's around there, try to get that removed back off, because if it's like now, it freezes, it thaws, it's a chunk of ice, it's a barrier, wheelchairs cannot make that jump. It's difficult for some of our citizens to climb over it, and it's dangerous. So, if you've got a sidewalk out in front, parking spaces out in front, you see the snowplow come through, try to go back out and clean off that ridge so there's easy access from the street back up onto the sidewalk.
Anything else, John?
That's about it.
David, I wanted to give you the last.
Thank you. I don't get it very often. I was going to offer some free advice, mindful that it's worth every nickel you pay for it. And the first point was going to encourage concision, brevity, conciseness in proceedings here, but then I figured I should probably follow my own advice and cut my list from 3 items to 2. So I'll move to encourage everyone to stay connected with your wards. We're all creatures of habit. We travel the same streets. We talk to the same people, neighbors, immediate neighbors, friends, and so on. Each of these wards is 1/3 of the city. It's 4,500 people, it's 60 or 70 blocks. There's a lot of things happening, even in that seemingly small piece of real estate. And a lot of things change. So make it a habit, if it isn't already, to travel on the roads you don't typically get to, see new things, or learn new things that you can at least ask about, and develop an ear for the voices that don't get heard so often. We have quite a few of those in each of our wards. Beyond that, salute our staff for their professionalism, their hard work. We ask a lot of them. They rise to the occasion consistently, and I think we should keep that in mind in our proceedings here. Sometimes the questions or the discussions get intense, a little chippy sometimes, maybe a little towel snap or a snark, or sometimes we get into a mode where it seems like it's perhaps a bit of a cross-examination of a hostile witness at a criminal trial, and counsel should rise above those kinds of things at all times and deliver to the staff the courtesy and respect that each of us would hope to receive in our own workplaces. It's been my pleasure, my great opportunity to serve during the term just now ending. I wish the city great success during the term yet to come, and with that I will wish everyone a happy Christmas and yield back the balance of my time.
Well, thank you, David. Your words of advice, I think, are valid for all of us to think about. So thank you for your wisdom there. Thank you also for your service to the community and your leadership. You've always been willing to take on any project, and some of those were small projects, and some of those were huge projects, like Highway 23 and transportation. So you've served the city well, and we are a better place for that. Let's thank you again. Okay, so let's move then to agenda item number 21, staff report. We'll start with Sharon.
Mr. Mayor and Council, as you may be aware, the city of Minneota has decided to not renew their ambulance license. What that meant is that the Emergency Medical Services Board needed to reassign their territory. The city of Marshall's license, which is under contract with North Memorial, actually overlapped the city of Minneota's ambulance area. What that meant is that the city of Marshall license could in fact take over the entire territory as recommended by North Memorial. But what did occur is there was a good discussion among the surrounding ambulances. Canby ambulance through Sanford did take some township sections as well as Cottonwood. I don't have the new maps. I think they'll be coming out shortly, but a majority of Minneota's ambulance territory is now under the license of the city of Marshall. And we do foresee that based on calls, mostly from Marshall and the near proximity, the call volume will mean that it remains net levy free, which wasn't the case for Minneota and the surrounding townships. They did a per capita charge actually for their service areas. But that is what occurred at a recent meeting. And then finally, I do also want to thank Council Member Sturrock for his support with my short time here and working with him. Not only is he my boss, but he was a really good mentor for me personally. So I thank you for your help. That's all I had, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Sharon. Glenn?
Just a couple items. We're completing the 2018 projects, wrapping those up and beginning work on our 2019 projects. We'd like to be starting to bring our bidding for projects in early 2019 because of the significant decrease in oil prices, and we may have the opportunity for significant project savings because of that. So keep an eye out for those early in 19. And other than that, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and Happy Holidays to all involved.
Thank you, Glenn. Dennis?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just a couple of the same things we seem to be discussing all the time. Special assessments, review, policy, trying to resolve some outstanding issues on several projects. So there's always special assessments that are out there. Cable TV discussions, we're trying to wrap up those contracts, those discussions. Scott Vandermillen and I have a Thursday afternoon, we are meeting with Charter to try to wrap that up fast. And Charter, we want to bring those to council together. So we hope to be in a position to resolve those shortly. And then there's always a year-end frenzy with real estate deals. And I have heard back on the Hess closing purchase from the HRA that's previously been approved. Mr. Hess went to Arizona, so we've communicated that way, but we're set to close on that one soon, and I will be getting that purchase agreement to you, Mr. Losinski. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Agenda item number 24, pending agenda items. Agenda item number 25 is the information items. Agenda item number 26 then is the upcoming meeting schedule, which brings us to agenda item number 27. David?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion by David, seconded by Craig to adjourn. Discussion?
I would think we all should have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
And happy holidays.
With
Thank you,
that,
Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, whatever.
Hanukkah, all of it.
with that, we'll move to a vote.
Hanukkah was done 5 days.
Motion passes.